Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our evening session entitled Nutrition and You. Before we get started, we just want to open with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us another day today. And we ask you that as we go through this session, you would give us wisdom, you would give us guidance, the things that we are doing wrong, we'll be able to seek clarity, we'll be able to seek information, and we'll be able to put these things into practice so that we'll be able to change our lifestyles, we'll be able to have holy temples, we'll be able to have clean temples, and we'll be able to be better persons as a result. We won't just keep this knowledge to ourselves, but we'll be able to share it with those around us so that we can impact change and be persons who could influence their society and those around them for the better. So we thank you for your mercies and your blessings. Touch our presenter. We ask that you will bless her, and we thank you for giving us her this evening so that we'll be able to learn from her. These things we ask in your precious name. Amen. All right. So good evening again to those who are joining us. My name is Jean-Paul Boulin, and I'm with Fiona Boulin, and I would like to welcome you this evening to tonight's presentation, Nutrition and You. Now, over the past decade or so, much emphasis was placed on nutrition and its effect on our lifestyle, especially as it relates to NCDs, non-communicable diseases, which remain rampant in our society. The Honorable Mia Moore-Motley, our Prime Minister, stated in 2020 that there is a heightened need for greater education in preventing NCDs. The government also enacted legislation such as the recent sweet drinks tax with the aim of penalizing bad eating habits and fostering a healthy national diet. Yet, many believe the true change begins at home and with our personal dietary habits. For some, however, education is needed and is necessary to understand how to cultivate a healthy diet in our daily lives. So, with this in mind, we are honored to have Ms. Leanda Hurdle, registered nutritionist, with us this evening to educate us on the fundamentals of starting and maintaining a balanced diet. Ms. Hurdle has over 10 years experience in the field of health, wellness, and nutrition. She is a community nutrition officer in the Ministry of Health and Wellness with the National Nutrition Programs, with the National Nutrition Center, She also practices privately and offers nutrition counseling and health and nutrition programs to individuals. Ms. Hurdle served as a consultant nutritionist at the Barbados Heart and Stroke Foundation for 2 weight loss programs. And she has gained invaluable experience in the food industry and in the areas of fitness, lifestyle change, and substance misuse in Barbados and also in the United Kingdom. Ms. Hurdle holds a master's degree in human nutrition with merit from the University of Glasgow, Scotland. And during this degree, she completed her specialization in obesity and weight management. Now, following her studies, Ms. Hurdle gained invaluable experience for over a year working as a health advisor for the UK National Health Service, supporting and providing specialist advice to individuals. In this role, she was trained in lifestyle change, substance misuse, and sexual health. When not working, Ms. Hurdle notes that she enjoys a good read, a good movie, a good dance, good company, and a good laugh. Now, before Ms. Hurdle comes, please remember to keep your microphones muted at all times during her presentation. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat, and at the appropriate time, one of the moderators can present to our speaker. Now, without any further ado, we're pleased to hand over this evening's session to Miss Leanda Hurdle.
Good evening, Jean Paul, and to our audience. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. So at this time, I am going to, please permit me to share my screen. Okay. Kindly confirm that you are seeing my screen, my first slide, my intro slide.
Yes, please.
Wonderful, great. So it's good to be with you this evening, sorry. And as introduced, the topic is nutrition and your choices, and you know that your food choices will impact your diet, and ultimately that will impact your health. So your choices, your diet, your health. So our goals at a glance. I want to cover 3 areas this evening. The first is introduction to, introduction to the food groups. And this is really the basics of nutrition. I thought this is very important to include this evening so that it sets the foundation for some of what we're going to cover. And then in the future, as you go about your daily lives, you're able to make better food choices because you know how you should be choosing your foods from the various food groups. Secondly, we're going to look at diabetes and hypertension management through diet. And then we're going to look at eating healthy on a budget. And this seems to be quite a busy topic these days in light of the pandemic. So we're also going to cover that area. Okay. I also want to say at this point, you can feel free to stop me and ask questions in between, but we can probably keep the majority of the questions for the end because I have quite a few slides to cover. All right, so let's look at the food groups. So there are 6 food groups used in the Caribbean, and these foods are really classified into groups based on the nutrients that they supply to the diet, the key nutrients they supply to the diet. So you may not know a whole lot about foods and the food groups, but most of you could probably tell that you wouldn't put chicken and apple in the same food group, right? They look like 2 different types of foods. So they must fall under 2 different food groups. So we've got 6 food groups. We have the staples food groups, and these are the starches or the carbohydrates. And we're going to talk shortly about carbohydrates in a bit more detail. So these foods provide the carbohydrates, the staples we need. There are other nutrients as well, but we're going to focus on the carbohydrates for this evening. So these are items like your ground provisions, rice, pasta, cornmeal. Cornmeal comes from corn and cocoa, cornmeal pap. I know some people look at corn as a starchy vegetable, but it comes under the staples: green bananas, plantains, pasta, bread, rice, oats, sago, barley, and so on and so forth. And then we have the legumes. So the legumes tend to be a food group that most people tend to kind of overlook and they skip through. They don't tend to get this food group in. And these are the peas, the beans, and the nuts. So your variety of nuts fall under here, as well as things like lentils and chickpeas and kidney beans and green peas and bonavis. And this is a very versatile food group. So from this food group, you get things like protein. So this is a pretty big food group for vegans because they'll be getting their protein from this food group as opposed to, you know, the meats and the fish. All right. And you also have in there things like your baked beans in a can. So you have variety of peas and beans coming in this food group. You also get carbohydrates from here as well, in addition to fiber and other minerals like calcium and iron. And again, I'm setting the basis, the foundation for things that we're going to cover in further slides. Then our third food group is foods from animals. And you will notice as you come around the sector, the circle, that the sectors are different sizes for each food group. So foods and animals, you get things like meat and fish. Your canned fish are included, like tuna and sardines. You get your products like your eggs, the milk, the yogurt, and the cheese. So they all come under this food group. And of course, you get protein from this food group, as well as things like fat, because we know there's fat associated with our meats and cheese. And you also get iron and other minerals. We're not going to go into the details, but those are the main nutrients you get from the foods from animals. Oftentimes when I ask people about the food group, they'll say to me protein. Protein is the nutrient. I don't want you to get mixed up between the nutrient, protein that comes from the food group, foods from animals. All right, our fourth food group is fruits. And I'm not going to go through this because I think we all know what fruits are, whether they're local or imported, okay? And fruits have things like fiber. They are high in natural sugars. You're going to get vitamins and minerals from this food group as well, things like vitamin C, really important and key to health. And then we have vegetables, which have a similar nutritional content as fruits, with the exception that they have very little to no sugar. All right. And of course, with fruits and vegetables, you want to get a what we call the rainbow of colors. So you don't want to stick to just one color fruit or vegetable. You want to get your greens, your reds, your oranges, your yellows, and so on. So getting in a variety of fruits and vegetables. And these two food groups have quite a lot of fiber. And then lastly, we have the fats and oils. And you'll notice that this food group is really tiny. So it means then, or it signifies that you want to get these in moderation, small amounts. So these are things like the natural fats and oils like coconut. Yes, coconut jelly, grated coconut. These are natural fats. Things like our lovely avocado, our local pear, that is high in fat. The Jamaican ackee and olives. So these are more in seeds, linseed, sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds. These are or what we call the natural fats. And then the more processed fats, the things like bacon. So bacon is so high in fat, we can't put it under the foods from animals. Also, you have things like butter, mayonnaise, and vegetable oils. So they all come in this food group. So the important thing here that I really want to emphasize is that when you are planning your meals for each day, to get what we call a balanced diet, because oftentimes you hear these terms thrown about and you don't really know what they mean. So getting a balanced diet or a nutritious diet means that each day, and I underscore it every day here, is that you should be getting foods from each of these 6 Caribbean food groups daily when you're planning your meals, okay? So like I said, a balanced diet includes food from all of the food groups, and this helps to meet a person's nutritional needs. We're not going to get nutrition from anywhere else. Even using supplements cannot meet your daily requirement for nutrients. It's supposed to supplement, as the term suggests, but really we should be getting the majority of our nutrients from the food that we eat. There really is no other way to get it. All right. And then, of course, this helps us to manage our health, either to reduce the risk of disease or to better manage a disease if you already have an existing disease. And this is obviously reducing the risk for the present as well as later in life. And, you know, often I hear the term, well, he or she is young, they'll run it off. It's not going to do them anything. Many times a person being diagnosed with a condition at 40 or 50 is not because they started eating poorly at 39 or 49. It's because of many years of a poor diet, okay? So you want to think about your diet even when you're young, at any stage along the life cycle. So we're looking at management of conditions through diet, and we're going to focus on 2 main conditions. We can't cover all of them, right? The important thing to understand here is that foods can be healthful, meaning they can promote good health, or they can be stressful, meaning they can underlie stress or they can cause the body to go under stress. Now, when we look at our bodies, we often see the outer appearance, but we fail to remember that there are internal structures and systems that are operating while we go about our business and while we sleep. And there's certain foods that can put stress on the systems and the organs, and there's some that can help to promote good health. Every single thing that we eat impacts our health, whether positively or negatively, and this is something to remember. So when I hear people use the term, they throw around the term, I have a cheat day or I cheated, you are not cheating. It is going to come back and bite you in the bum, especially if these cheat days happen on a regular basis. So let's look at the first condition, which is diabetes. Also, well, clinically called diabetes mellitus. I'm not a doctor, so permit me if I didn't pronounce that correctly. There are various types of diabetes, but we're going to focus on type 2, which is the lifestyle diabetes. And so this is a condition where the body is not controlling blood sugar properly. All right. Now, blood sugar, also known as glucose is sugar, same thing. And glucose is a very important nutrient. So it's not a bad thing, okay? It is the body's preferred energy source. So it's the go foods that we need for energy. And it's the brain's main source of energy or fuel. And that's why sometimes if we haven't eaten for a long period, we tend to get a headache, right? Because the brain is now being starved of fuel. Glucose comes from carbohydrates. So you would have heard me use the term carbohydrate a couple times and you'll be still thinking, I don't quite understand what she's saying. So carbohydrates are starches and sugars in our diet, okay? So let's look a bit closely at some of these starches, because sometimes when I'm speaking to patients in the clinic and I ask them to give me a couple foods that you think are carbohydrates, they don't have a clue. And so this is important for all of us, but particularly persons who are diabetic. You need to know what foods impact your blood sugars. You just can't eat left, right, and center because the food has passed across your mouth, right? You need to make wise decisions when it comes to preparing meals and eating foods. So the food group staples, as we mentioned earlier, these are the foods high in starch, the starches. And these are anything that is made with flour. So bread, biscuits, homemade stuff. So if you're making pancakes, bakes, fritters, fish cakes, dumplings, wafers, whatever you're making with flour. Your cereals. So this could be your breakfast cereals that are more processed that you buy from the supermarket, or it can be things like oats and sega and barley and all these good things as well. They all are high in starch. Corn as well, we mentioned this earlier. And corn makes cornmeal, and from that we get cornmeal, pap, and cuckoo. So they're also included. Pasta, rice, ground provisions, so bread, fruit, sweet potato, yam, cassava, eddo, dasheen, green banana, they're all included in there, as well as plantain. And of course, this is not an exhaustive list. There are other things that may be included in the staples as well. All right, the legumes, which we mentioned before, are peas, beans, and nuts. They also contain starch. Fruits, we know these are naturally sweet, so these contain carbohydrate in the form of sugar. And these are all fruits. However, there are some fruits that contain more sugar than others. Take, for example, banana and mangoes. We're in mango season, and I have a lot of patients come to me with high blood sugars because they ate 4 and 5 mangoes at a time. So we have to watch the fruit. All right, and then milk and dairy. So there's a sugar in milk called lactose. You might have heard the term, and basically this is the milk sugar. All right, so all kinds of milk will have lactose unless it's lactose free. In addition to that, we have yogurt because that comes from milk. And then we have all these sweet, naughty things we like to have, the juices and the drinks and cakes and cookies and so on, even honey. So those are your carbohydrate foods. So understanding diabetes now, I really thought I would focus in by concentrating a couple of my slides on diabetes. And I wanted to use the concept, I like to coin this concept called the lock and key effect so that you can better understand as I explain this. Now, what's happening in a person who does not have diabetes, all right, so your body is generally functioning well, is that you have a key, which is insulin. And that insulin is produced from the pancreas in a response to you eating carbohydrate, which you talked about just now. So when we have breadfruit, or we have juice, or we have an apple, the body produces insulin. The insulin is a key. Each cell of the body has these things on them called receptors, which are locks. So the insulin is supposed to go to these locks, turn the locks, the cells open, and the sugar, the glucose moves from the bloodstream into the cells so that the cells can utilize that sugar. And we see there in the picture, the door opens. So that's a normal functioning body. With diabetics, what happens is that this key, which is the insulin, it is present, it goes to the lock to unlock to do its job, but the cell or the receptor fails to respond to that insulin signal. So the key is there, the insulin is there, but the body is just not responding to that signal to open. And so all that sugar is there in the bloodstream. It is not able to move and be channeled from there into the cell. And what you ultimately get is all that sugar remaining in the blood, and it's increasing and increasing and accumulating. And basically this is called insulin resistance, which then therefore leads to diabetes. All right, so I hope that is clear and you kind of understand what's happening in your body when you are diabetic. So the impact of sugar, this diagram just shows you quickly what's happening and when we eat certain foods and how the body deals with it. On the left side, you see there's an apple. So you eat a complex carbohydrate. And a complex carbohydrate is a carbohydrate that has lots of fiber in it. So fruits naturally are high in fiber. So you eat your fruit. What we have on the left side there is a simplified picture of the stomach, which looks like that pouch. And leading them from there is that tube-looking thing, which is your small intestine. And that's where the sugar is being absorbed. You would notice that as the apple moves right along the intestine, it is being gradually absorbed along there. And so what tends to happen is you're getting a nice gradual slow increase of blood sugars from your intestine into your blood, which is what you want. So the graph at the bottom on the left hand shows you that gradual increase. Whereas on the right side, when you eat these refined sugars or simple sugars, before the cake or whatever you're eating sauce, it could be a soft drink, it could be cookies, it could be white bread. What is happening is before the stomach can even empty well, you're noticing what's happening. There's a rush of sugar from the intestines into the blood. So then you get these spikes in blood sugars, all right? And the body doesn't cope with that well at all. So knowing your numbers are important, all right? And this is just a table to show you what your numbers should look like. Oftentimes, many people don't know what their numbers are because either they're diabetic and they're not testing them, or they have not been to the doctor for ages. So they don't even know if they're pre-diabetic or even diabetic. And so having regular checkups is very important. So the green column shows you what your fasting and your postprandial blood sugars should look like. All right, so please take note of those numbers. When you are pre-diabetic, you're on the fence, so you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And that is why it's important to go to your regular checkups, because if the doctor realizes then that by testing you are pre-diabetic, she can refer you over to a nutritionist if you're in a public health setting like the clinic or maybe hospital, and this can be reversed. But if you never go, that can be festering, and then eventually it develops into diabetes. But pre-diabetes can be reversed. And then you have the diabetic person. So blood sugars over 7, fasting would be considered, you'd be considered diabetic. And above 10, 2 hours after a meal, you'd be considered diabetic. So a few tips to help you manage your blood sugars. You want to eat, as I said, more complex foods, more complex carbohydrates, foods that have a lot of fiber, they're high in fiber. So whether fruits or vegetables, or legumes, or nuts, or whole grains like brown rice, or corn, or ground provisions. These are all plant-based foods, whole foods that retain the fiber content. All right, if you're going to use flour, you want to mix white flour with the whole wheat flour, the multigrain flour. If you're using crackers and breads, you want to ensure you get a whole grain or whole wheat, because at least you're going to get a bit more fiber there. Pastas, whole wheat pastas where possible. And your nuts and seeds, these are all more on the natural side. The more you process the food, less fiber it's going to have. Second point on managing blood sugars, you want to use less sugar and sugary foods. And this sounds like it's pretty obvious, right? Less sugar and sugary foods. A lot of foods do have sugar. So you want to limit foods with added sugar. You want to replace, if you're doing foods at home, try using more dried fruit or unsweetened applesauce, or even using things like cinnamon or nutmeg you add to your baked goods to give that flavor without the added sugar. Drink more plain or flavored water. You can flavor your water with lemon juice, with orange, squeeze orange in there, lemon, squeeze. You can have cinnamon in there, or mint leaves, or even like the effervescent vitamin C, just anything to flavor your water up to increase palatability. Or you can have an unsweetened herbal tea. You can also use juices and smoothies, but these, remember, still are concentrated in sugars. So you want to limit the serving a day to half a glass. And with coconut water, you can have coconut water, but if you are having issues with controlling your potassium, or you have chronic kidney disease, you want to limit the coconut water or avoid altogether. The third thing is to control the portions of your staples. So I like to use this, the fist, the folded fistful, to show people, if you hold up your fist and fold that, you would notice, or you get an idea of how much starch you should be having with your meal. All right. Remember we said the starches are the things like the rice and the pasta and the ground provision and the caramel cocoa. So I know that many people might not be able to have a plate that looks like this, right? Where you're having more vegetables than anything else, but at least if you can get to as close to this proportion as possible, you want to ensure that you have adequate vegetables and you cut back on the carbohydrate portion, which obviously the body is going to break down to sugar or digest to sugar. And of course, you will have your protein, which is your meat or your fish. Have a regular pattern of eating. This is very important. I can't say how many times I have patients who come to me, they're diabetic and they're not eating on time or they skip meals. So what happens when you skip a meal is that your blood sugars start to dip low and the body realizes this and it taps into the liver because the liver has got stores of sugar in there and it sends this converted sugar straight into the bloodstream to get your blood sugars back up because the body doesn't want you to go into a diabetic coma. So if a person's last meal is 6 p.m. at evening, and then they have breakfast at 8 or 9 the next morning, and they say to me, but I didn't eat anything late last night, but yet my blood sugar is high. And this happens quite often. And it's because your blood sugars dipped low. The body doesn't want you to go into a coma, so it taps into the liver and sends that sugar out into the bloodstream. So as a diabetic, and even if you're not a diabetic, you just want to practice having meals at regular times. Try to space out your meals by about no more than 6 hours. So if breakfast is 7 in the morning, then 6 hours after that would be 1 o'clock. Try not to have lunch past 1. And then 6 hours after that for dinner would be around 7 p.m. So try to space out your meals. And if you get hungry, obviously in that 5 or 6 hour period, then you can have a healthy snack. But please try not to skip meals. It's not good for your blood sugar management. We talked about diabetes. We're going to quickly look at hypertension in the next couple slides. Hypertension is basically when the long-term pressure on the inside of your arteries is too high, and that can cause health problems. Now, many people can have hypertension for years or high blood pressure for years and not know that they have it because it's silent. It's a silent killer we often hear, right? And so you can have hypertension for years just there brewing silently. And even though you may not have symptoms, damage, all the world damage is being done to your arteries and to your heart. All right, so it's very important that if you have been diagnosed as diabetic, you check your blood sugars. That is the only way to know it's high. I often get patients saying to me, well, I know when it's high because I get symptoms. Those are the times you get symptoms, but there may be other times when it's high and you do not get symptoms. I have persons who come to me, they say they feel well, no headaches, no nosebleeds, nothing of the sort. Then the nurse takes the blood pressure and it is elevated, but they're feeling perfectly fine. And if this continues, you can get things like strokes, heart attacks, and even kidney disease. All right, with your blood pressure, there are two readings. The upper reading, which is usually the pressure when the heart contracts or beats, and the bottom number, the diastolic, is the pressure in the arteries between beats, okay? So that's where the two numbers come. And so again, this is just a table to show you what your readings should look like. And you want to aim for readings below 130 over 85. Now, please note that these numbers are for persons who are not diabetic. If you are not diabetic, the green column is what you should be aiming for. If you are already diabetic, diabetes puts you at increased risk. And so unfortunately, your numbers or your limit has to drop. So now you should be aiming for 120 over 80, because I know there's often a confusion with the numbers. If you're diabetic, you want to aim for blood pressure of 120 over 80. If you are diabetic already, then if you're not diabetic, sorry, then 130 over 85. And of course, for anybody, if you're over 140 over 90, then that is elevated, you're hypertensive, all right? So bear these numbers in mind. So a few tips to reduce your sodium or your salt intake. Salt is made up of sodium and chloride. Sodium is usually the mineral of concern. And so when you have more sodium than you need to, or more salt than you need to have, it can increase your blood pressure. The limit is 6 grams or 1 teaspoon a day, but most of us, we don't have, even for me, I really don't know when I have reached 1 teaspoon, because you eat so many things throughout the day, you can't tell really how much is in everything you've had. So the idea then is to limit the salt in everything that you use throughout the day. But Bajans, we like to taste salt in food, right? And if we can't taste it, it does not taste good. It is fresh, so we don't want it. So we have to retrain our taste buds to appreciate foods with less salt. And so in this table on the left side, you have things that we tend to do, but instead of doing those things, you want to try what's on the right-hand side of the table. So I think that the rationale behind lime and salt in our fish and meat is to get rid of the rawness. So just lime it. You don't need the salt. Leave the salt for the seasoning, right? When it comes to things like complete seasoning and seasoned salts and things of that nature, these kinds of condiments, look for salt-free seasoning instead. I think Miss Dash has a salt-free seasoning. There's other brands. MIS has a salt-free seasoning. All right. Instead of the salt meat all the time and the pigtail, because we're kind of used to that, try more fresh herbs. Instead of the Maggi cubes or the bouillon cubes or the ketchups and the soy sauces and the various sauces, use more of the fresh herbs or look for dried herbs. You can do Italian herbs or allspice without the added salt. Ketchup can be replaced by no salt tomato paste. I often say that salt adds saltiness, but herbs give a variety of bursting flavors. And while salt enhances flavor, it does not give something flavor. It can only give saltiness, not flavor. Okay, so you want to get a variety of herbs in instead. These are just additional tips to help lower your blood pressure. Taste food before adding salt. And if you are going to add salt, measure with a teaspoon, please. Just don't throw in, okay? Limit processed meat products. I probably will step on a few corns now, but limit processed meat products like bacon and ham and hot dogs and sausages and burgers and corned beef and lunch meat and chunky ham and you name them, all right? Limit them as much. If you can avoid them, especially when you're older in years, okay, or if you've been diagnosed with hypertension. Cheese also is quite high in sodium, so you want to be careful with cheese and not have it too frequently. If you're going to use canned fish, like tuna or sardines, use the one in water rather than brine. Or you could probably use the ones in oil, but you want to drain that oil off very well. One of the things that really helps control blood pressure is using leafy green vegetables. So things like spinach, things like Chinese cabbage and kale, even using broccoli, string beans, okras, mainly all green vegetables, but particularly leafy greens. Christophine is also great, as well as parsley and cucumber. So all green vegetables are great for blood pressure. They allow the body, the blood vessels to produce something called nitric oxide, which allows your blood vessels to open up and relax. And that's really good for managing blood pressure. Also, you want to read the nutrition facts labels on many of your products so you can choose the ones with less sodium. And the nutrition facts label is usually at the back of the package for most items or the side. Drink a lot of water and have less sugary drinks. So when you drink water, you don't have to worry about the salt in it, the fat in it, the sugar in it, the preservatives in it. It's plain old water, and it's the best thirst quencher. It also helps to regulate sodium in the body and helps the kidneys flush out any excess sodium. So very important. Soft drinks are not going to do that, okay? Also limit alcohol and caffeine. Caffeine is a stimulant and it increases heart rate. So this really is not a recipe for management of blood pressure. Alcohol also affects the heart muscles and the arteries and puts pressure on them. All right, so you want to be careful. Also exercising. So you might not be able to exercise every day, but at least 3 or 4 days a week, try to get in some exercise. You just need 30 minutes of it. All right, it could be a sport, it could be gardening, it could be swimming, it could be walking, doing an aerobics class, line dancing. Just get more active. This controls both blood pressure and blood sugar. So I know I said a lot, so I'm just going to break here just for a minute to find out if anybody has any questions.
Yes. Hey, good night.
Good night.
Hey. Yeah, I wanted to ask, you mentioned about avocado like being high in fat.
Mm-hmm.
Right, okay. So I love guacamole, and with it, of course, like just avocado. So is it not good to eat the avocado? I mean, in like even in other forms, if just eat it regular,
Right.
like slice it and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess the avocado is one of the sources of healthy natural fats. The good thing about these natural fat sources is that they also have fiber with them. So they're good to use. And the other good thing about avocado is that it is seasonal. Unless you're going to be buying it all year round, those really expensive ones from the supermarket, then avocado is only seasonal. So you're only probably getting it 2 months in a whole year. So it's actually okay to use. Manage your serving size. Don't eat the whole avocado, maybe quarter of an avocado. If it's a small one, maybe half of it. So you can have your guacamole. That's nice. Enjoy your guacamole because you're still going to be getting it's healthy fats. Those healthy fats are good for heart health. It's when you start overdoing now on the unhealthy fats like mayonnaise and oils and things like that. So no guilt there.
Oh, okay. All right. I have actually another question.
Sure.
So I've heard a lot about people talking about the about gut health and how important it is to have a good gut. I'm not sure if it's something you plan to get to or but I just want to know if this is another fad or if there's like something really important as people sort of make it out to be.
So I'm not actually covering that in this session, but obviously you asked. So yeah, gut health is key. 60 to 70% of our immune system is in our gut. And if your gut is not healthy, you can get all kinds of conditions like ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome, acid reflux, a lot of gas and flatulence, and a whole bunch of things can stem from there. You can also get leaky gut syndrome, which is basically where the porous lining of your intestines, the holes become too large. So then items or food particles that shouldn't be getting through are actually getting through and circulating through the blood system and causing inflammation in various parts of your body, whether it's your heart or your arteries or your joints. So gut health is key. And obviously, high fiber diet is great for gut health. It's not a fad. Gut health is very key for managing your overall health. I mean, this is literally a topic on its own, but it also helps to strengthen your immune system, having a good, healthy gut. Some people are a bit intolerant to gluten. So you may find that if you eat a lot of gluten, which is a lot of flour-based products, because gluten is in wheat and flour, you may start to get issues with your gut health. So that's not for everybody. You can also use a very good brand of probiotics, which also helps manage your gut health.
So when you say you're talking about like yogurts and stuff, like
so yogurt doesn't have the potency of probiotics that an actual capsule will have, a supplement will have. And one of the issues with yogurt too is that some of them can be very sweet. If you can get a good quality yogurt, which is low in sugar, then that may be the better route to go. Where you get your probiotics.
Plain one.
Yes, a plain one without that added sugar. So that would help.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I'll take one more.
Hi, Leandra. Very good
Hi
presentation.
I'm
going to touch on coffee.
Pardon me?
I'm going to touch on coffee.
All right.
If the coffee is black, like just a teacup, not so you're not drinking a big cup of black coffee, just black coffee. Is that advisable or no? Just plain black coffee with no additives at all.
That would be okay. It's all really about moderation. So two things there. The amount, you said you have a small amount, so that would be okay. And also regularity, because sometimes we get in our minds, well, I only having a teacup, so you can have it 3 times in a day. But if you do that 3 times in a day, every day, it adds up. Right? So just be careful. That would be okay. Just be careful with amount and regularity. Or you could just have a decaffeinated coffee. That removes the caffeine aspect,
Okay, no problem. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'll move on and you'll get the opportunity to ask more questions. So this is the last bit of the presentation. and I really want to speak in length on this aspect. So eating healthy on a budget. So this is a pretty busy topic these days. Everybody's talking about eating healthy on a budget. And the reality is the cost of living it's pretty high in Barbados. And these days we're finding that let me speak for me. Every time I go to the supermarket, there are items that I'm used to buying that the prices are just skyrocketing, going up by $1. You know, so if I'm buying 6 of those are $6 on just one item. You haven't started to speak about all the other items, you know? So, this is a pretty important topic. So there are 4 things to kind of consider, I would say. First, looking at your specific health conditions. Now, we highlighted 2 conditions, diabetes and hypertension, but you may have other conditions that I didn't have the time to touch on tonight. So when you are buying stuff, you're going supermarket shopping, you need to not just buy because I like this thing or because it is cheap necessarily, but you also have to look at controlling your particular condition or the condition of somebody else in your house that you may be caring for or preparing meals for. All right, your home's basic basket of goods is the second thing to consider. I'm going to talk more about that. 3, building on that basic basket of goods, because now you know what the 6 food groups are. You can now pull foods from each of these 6 food groups, because remember, you're supposed to be getting foods from each of these food groups every day to have a balanced diet. So now you can build on that basic food group, basic basket of goods, to get an affordable shopping done. And then 4thly, following through with proper meal planning. Okay, and that is very important. So let's look at the first area, your specific health conditions. If you're diabetic, because now you are well up to date with diabetes and how you should be managing it now with your diet, you have a good idea as to how you should be shopping now, paying attention to the foods that you pick up and that you purchase so that you're managing your condition. It could be hypertension. We didn't cover cholesterol and heart disease. It could be acid reflux. It could be cancer. It could be sinusitis. It could be anemia. Whatever condition you have, you really should be purchasing foods around or based on your particular condition. You must consider that condition. And this is a warning. Stop paying twice. Please stop paying twice. And by that, I mean, you go to the supermarket, you pay for things that aren't healthy, you eat them, you make yourself sick. You make yourself sick. Nobody did make you sick. You make yourself sick by some of the things that you eat. And then you pay again for a doctor to look after you and tell you what the problem is. Or you pay for tests to be done because they don't know what the problem is. Or you pay for medication. So you're paying twice because of what you eat. So be aware of what you are really paying for when you go to the supermarket. You work hard for your money. You know, you work hard, you're getting a pension, you may not be getting a lot. Don't take your money and spend on things that are not important to your health, that are not going to do you any good, right? So try to spend carefully and based on your health condition. Secondly, your home's basic basket of goods is what you want to consider when you want to eat healthy on a budget. Now, every home is different. My basic basket of goods may be slightly different from Michelle's basic basket of goods or Jean-Paul and his wife's basic basket of goods. This is just a list, a very short list, conservative list of things that could make up a family's basic basket of goods. There are some things that you know are basics in your house. You need to have them. They should be always present. These are not always things that you might have to buy every time you go to the supermarket either, because things like sugar and salt, you might not need to buy every month. I would hope not, right? So things like flour and rice and bread and biscuits are things that you may want to keep. Like I said, this list may differ from household to household. Some households may have less in their basic basket of goods. Some people may have more. You would see that I put a question mark next to corned beef because you want to ask yourself the question, do I need the corned beef? Or maybe I don't need to buy as many cans of corned beef because it's highly salted. All right, maybe I should buy more tuna and sardines. That may be better for me in the long run. All right, I think I also have the question marks next to the, the margarine. Just give me a minute. So asking yourself the question, do I really need to buy margarine? Why am I buying margarine? What do I add the margarine to? Sometimes when I'm speaking to patients and they say they use margarine, and I ask them why they use it, they're like, they can't really tell me why they use it. They put it in the rice when they're cooking it. Do you really need it in rice? So just a couple questions to ask. I'm not saying don't buy it at all, but again, there are some pertinent questions we need to ask ourselves to help us cut back on, the spending. Okay. So once you have determined your house's basic basket of goods, the things that must be on your supermarket list when you're looking to eat affordably. Now you can build on that foundation. You can build on that basic basket of goods. So obviously, we're speaking about eating healthy on a diet. So you have to purchase affordable foods. Now, this is one of the main reasons why I looked at the 6 food groups, because we said in one of the first slides that a balanced or nutritious diet should have foods from each of the 6 food groups every day. So you can't tell me that Sunday you had vegetables and a little bit, some were left over from Monday, so you ate a little bit Monday and you didn't have any vegetables to eat for the rest of the week. Honestly, that is not good enough, because you're not going to go a whole week without taking a shower or brushing your teeth. You look after the outward appearance, and now you have to begin to look after the inward, right? So the bodily functions and looking after health. So now we're going to build, and I just give some examples here. So again, what affordable foods you add may be slightly different, but I'm just giving you some ideas. So some families may say, you know what, I'm supposed to get in staples. I want to use healthy staples. So these are some of the complex staples or complex carbohydrates, the healthier options that you could use that would be affordable. Oats, a bag of oats, very affordable, right? Sago and barley, I know we've moved away from these things, but these things can be boiled for the family on mornings as a porridge. Right, you're going to buy all these fancy granola cereals that cost $12 and $16 when you have a bag of sago for $3 or $4 at home. All right, these can come as the barley pearls, or you can also get, I think, get barley flakes, or you can get powdered barley. So you have options, choose from them. Potatoes, this could be English potatoes or sweet potatoes. And yes, diabetics can eat English potatoes. Just remember your folded fistful, your portion size, and then you couple that with vegetables to help manage the blood sugars. Okay, we have the green bananas, which generally tend to be affordable. Some people have trees, so you may even get green bananas without purchasing. And then pasta, and you can always look for whole wheat pasta. Pasta generally tends to be reasonable, or whole wheat chow mein. So again, if you're looking to eat affordably, healthy on a budget, these are some of the staples that you may want to consider adding to your grocery list. You may not be able to afford all 5 of what I have there, but you choose the ones that work for you in addition to the rice and the whole wheat flour. Foods from animals is the next food group. So we have eggs, chicken, cheese, mince meat, and mackerel. Again, these are foods from animals which will offer protein. You may not be able to afford all 5 of these, but you may be able to afford just 3 of them. Remember, it is about eating as healthy as your personal budget will afford. You're not looking at your neighbor. You're not looking at your friend and what she told you she bought. You're looking at what your household can manage. If it is eggs, you buy eggs. If you remember that, I find too with chicken, you probably are going to do better if you buy a whole chicken than if you buy all these specialized parts, because it tends to be more expensive. And then when you cut it up, it may not serve the family well if you have more than 3 or 4 people in the household. So getting the whole chicken may be more budget-wise. Looking at cheese, remember cheese, yes, it's high in sodium, so you may not necessarily need to buy big chunks of cheese, but small amounts. Minced beef, mackerel as well is another option. Okay, legumes and nuts. What I love about this food group is that it's such a versatile food group. You can use lentils and these other peas in so many different ways. And we're gonna touch on that in another slide or 2. All right, but again, if you can't afford to buy all of these, and by the way, these are only $2-3 a pack. If you're gonna buy the dried ones, you can buy the dry ones as opposed to the can, because the dry ones, you're gonna get more for your buck. than if you buy the ones in the cans. Plus the ones that are dry don't have that additional sodium and all the preservatives that you're gonna get in the canned ones. All right, so peanut butter is also a reasonable legume nut, nut butter. So you can buy this as well. And that you can use as part of your breakfast or as a snack. Fruits, not all fruits are expensive. If you can manage bananas, apples, and oranges, then you're good. You don't have to buy all the expensive ones. Sometimes you want to get the strawberries and the peaches and the nectarines. And then we say, oh, fruits are expensive, but we overlook the bananas, the apples, and the oranges. Plus, some of us may have fruit trees. So when the fruits are in season, you use them, okay? Sometimes watermelon can be reasonable. Sometimes the year when they're in season, if you can afford them, you buy the watermelon. I have a list of vegetables here as well. You might not be able to afford all of these, but you can choose about 3 of them, and you use those 3 until you can purchase more. All right, local lettuce is generally between $3 and $4 for a bag, so that's not expensive. Pumpkin, carrots, these are generally reasonable. Fats and oils, you don't have to go overboard and buy sunflower oil, olive oil, coconut oil. Stick to one and use that one. Linseed is generally pretty reasonable. You can either buy the linseed. What I do is I buy the linseeds and I blend in my blender and I get it powdered, because you get more for your money when you do that as opposed to buying the already ground linseed. I buy the whole linseed. When I get home, I grind them in the blender and I have my powdered linseed and I get more for my money. And I put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in the fridge, or in a plastic container, a glass container, and put it in the fridge. And then mayonnaise. So you don't have to buy all the various fats and oil options. You stick to 1 or 2 or 3 and you let those work for you. In addition to this, there may be also things like teas that you may want to buy, or spices and herbs in addition to these. But again, this is just building according to what your budget can afford. And lastly, in this area, we're looking at proper meal planning and preparation. Sometimes, and I've been guilty of this in the past, where I have okras and spinach at home, but I still want to get broccoli and string beans. So I go and spend $20 on okras, on string beans and broccoli, when I had 2 green vegetables home that I could use. So when it comes to planning your meals now, you're looking at eating affordably. You want to plan your meals ahead of time, first of all, because if you don't plan ahead of time, when you do feel hungry, you end up picking up the quickest thing there is, which is usually unhealthy. So you want to plan ahead of time so that you know what you're going to be preparing and you can start preparing. And you want to prepare meals around what you already have at home. Don't do like me, like what I did in the past, and expense yourself to buy things when you have items at home that you can use for your particular meal. All right, the second thing here is to make time to pre-prep. Again, this goes back to planning ahead. If you want to do the same, let's say you want to do kidney beans and a nice gravy, a close tomato sauce kind of gravy thing, and you realize, well, I want to do these kidney beans, but geez, I have these dried beans and I now got to think about cooking these can take forever to cook. What I do, I buy a package or 2 and I soak them overnight. While I'm sleeping, my peas are soaking. So there's some things that you can do way ahead of time. When I soak them, it means then that it's a lot quicker in terms of cooking time. 15, 20 minutes the most to cook my peas and beans because they've already soaked overnight. All right, so little things like that will help you to eat affordably. Things that you may need to do as well is pre-cooking, just like I said, cooking the peas and beans, or if it's things like fish and meat, you may want to season ahead of time and freeze them. Avoid wastage of fresh produce. And this is something that I find some people do. You may have a breadfruit tree or a fruit tree. You have things in abundance, you let them waste, or you try to overeat, overconsume so they don't waste, and then maybe your blood sugars go to hand, when you can freeze certain things for late in the year. If you come to my house, my freezer is loaded with breadfruit. I was getting quite a lot of breadfruit. What I did is I parboil it, half cook it more or less, put them in Ziploc bags and freeze them. So late in the year when I can't get breadfruit, rather than going out there and buying expensive yam, I have breadfruit. And breadfruit can be prepared in so many different ways, okay? So try to avoid wastage and utilizing what you already have. Ensure meals are balanced. So when it comes to planning your meals, you're probably wondering what it should look like. It should be a staple. We understand what staples are now. It should be a protein food, whether it is a food from animals, which is going to offer proteins, like chicken or fish, or it can be legumes like peas and beans. They can replace your foods from animals. And the third component should be fruits or vegetables. So when you're having your breakfast, you could have a staple, a protein, and some fruit. For lunch and for dinner, you can have a staple, a protein, and some vegetables, okay? Let's look at some practical options. We're talking about being affordable, eating on a budget. Breakfast options. Sometimes we are looking to go and buy muffins when we have flour at home. Pancake mixes when we have flour at home. All these fancy items when we have flour at home. The older folks utilized what they had. Utilize what you have. You're looking for snacks for your children rather than buying rough tops one day and digestive biscuits another day and tea time biscuits. You're spending all this money and then saying, oh, it's expensive to eat healthy, you can't afford vegetables. You have flour at home. You mix the whole wheat flour with the white flour, or you add linseed to your flour and you make a pancake or a muffin and let the children appreciate these homemade goods. That way you are saving money. All right, and the muffins can be a variety. You can do raisin and cinnamon muffins. You can do carrot muffins. Make a variety of different muffins so that you don't get tired of the same ones. Excuse me. Porridges and cereals. Again, going back to the older way of doing things, rather than buying all of these commercial cereals that often are sugar loaded, you can have things like oats or make your own granola. You know, at one time, I don't do it much now, but I would make a granola cereal where I'll get the rolled oats. I would get some sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds. My house already has powdered cinnamon. We already have some type of oil in the house. We would use raisins, and I will put all that in a baking tray with a little honey, mix it all up, put it in a baking tray and bake it, and I have my own granola cereal. There are little things like that we can do to save money. Substitute meat and fish with legumes. Legumes offer protein, like I said, and this type of legume, you can replace your meat and fish. So if you're doing chicken, you buy 2 pounds of chicken and you plan to use these 2 pounds of chicken to do curry chicken. Let the chicken stretch and use the chicken twice. Divide the chicken up. Use 1 pound now, and you do your curry chicken with chickpeas. So it's half chickpeas, half chicken. So that chicken that you would utilize all at once and then have to run back to the supermarket again next week and buy more, now can last you twice. And legumes are a very affordable source of protein. You can even do a meatless dish where you do without the meat and do a kidney beans stew or some kind of pea soup. You don't need the meat all the time. You don't need the meat all of the time, okay? Also looking at what we would term 1, 2, 3, and I know everybody knows what the 1, 2, 3 is, right? Corned beef, potato, and pasta. Well, you can reimagine your 1, 2, 3. You can still have a 1, 2, 3, but you're going to add a vegetable to it now. It could be carrots, it could be potato, and it could be tuna. All right, so you're reimagining that and you are changing the ingredients a bit, because 1, 2, 3, the old time way is that you're having 2 starches. You're having both pasta and potato. That pasta can be left for another meal that could serve you another time. You just use the potato, replace the pasta with some carrots or some spinach, and you have a balanced diet which offers you vegetables with not so much starch. Also, you can utilize breads and biscuits for light meals. So you don't have to go and expense yourself to buy a chicken breast sandwich. You have bread and biscuits at home. Get creative. Find a nice healthy topping. Somebody talked about guacamole. You can mix the guacamole with the tuna and do a wrap or put it on your bread or your biscuits. All right. And then when it comes to snacks, you know what we can do? Sometimes we buy popcorn, packages of popcorn. The popcorn is so highly salted, it affects your blood pressure. You want to give your child popcorn to take to school, or you want to nibble popcorn at work, You buy the kernels, the popcorn kernels, the corn kernels, a package of them, which just a few dollars, and you pop them in the saucepan. Then you can control how much salt is added to it and how much oil you add to it. And you can put cinnamon and flavor it up in different ways. And you have your popcorn you can take along in a Ziploc bag to work. Rather than spending $2 on popcorn, you have, you know, several batches of popcorn that you can do when you want. You can also utilize local fruits, do smoothies, do shakes. You can use do a shake using milk, banana, and oats. Simple ingredients that we probably have at home now, rather than going out and buying a commercial smoothie or shake. All right. And again, earlier we talked about baked goods. So doing your little breads and muffins and so on from home and utilizing the ingredients you have. So I get, and that's me a lot, but you don't understand. Eating healthy is so expensive. And I look at them with wide eyes and a smile on my face, and I say, retrain your taste buds. Eating healthy does not always have to be expensive. I think what happens sometimes is that we are looking at certain items that we want when there are other items that are healthy that are more affordable. So I thought I would go on the website because I don't buy these things really, so I didn't know the prices. I went on one of the websites of a popular fast food chain here, and I got the prices of a chicken breast sandwich, a roti, and a snack box. For those who buy these things, would probably be able to say, well, yes, these prices look just about right. And this serves one person. You buy a snack box, most of the time you're not dividing it between you and another person. Not if you want a belly full, all right? The rotis we know are pretty small, so that's clearly not going to serve 2 people for a meal. Now, if you decide, you know what, I'm going to go the healthy route and I'm going to take some time to buy my bag of rice between 800 grams and a kilogram, generally costs between $3.80 and $5. A whole chicken, if you want, again, to spend within your means, some people may be able to afford a $25 chicken, but we just want a $16 one for now. Local lettuce is generally about $3.70, $3.80, $3.50, depending on where you go. And your pound of carrots, $3.50. Now, when you add those prices, you get at the top of that table, it says $28.30. And while upfront, $28.30 is more than your snack box at $17.50, look how many people this meal will serve. And I am being conservative when I say it serves 5. Because you can probably get a whole chicken to definitely serve more than 5 people. Your lettuce and carrots can definitely serve more than 5 people. And when you don't use the figure of 5 and you divide that figure, $28.30 by 5, the cost is $5.66. So tell me honestly, you want to prepare a healthy meal at home. This is balanced. You're getting your vegetables, you're getting your protein, which is your chicken, and you're getting your bag of rice. And if you want peas in it, you buy a bag of lentils for $2 or $3 and add to that. It still is going to work out cheaper per person than you go and buy a roti and or a sandwich. What are you really paying for? Loaded with salt, loaded with fat. You're not even sure what else is added to it, how much times they reuse the oil to fry the chicken and the chips. And then you're still not satisfied. Plus, you didn't get any vegetables with it. You still have to then go and spend more money to buy a salad from that particular fast food chain. So at the end of the day, it's not worth it. It is not worth it at all. So retrain your taste buds. I think this is my last slide. So tips to help you eat well on a budget. A few more tips. Make more foods from scratch. Sometimes we have the ingredients. Use what you already have and plan your meals around what you already have at home. Be creative in the kitchen. Think about how many things you can prepare if you have, going back to breadfruit. Breadfruit, you could breadfruit chips. You could stretch out the breadfruit. You could do breadfruit in a soup. You could do a breadfruit casserole. You could do a breadfruit pie, put a little cheese in it and bake it. You can do so much with breadfruit cocoa. So many ways you can prepare that breadfruit. If all you have there is breadfruit, and you find a variety of ways to prepare your breadfruit. And if all you have is sweet potato, find a variety of ways to prepare your sweet potato. And if all you have is rice, you find a variety of ways to prepare your rice. But get creative. And these days we have access to internet, so it's no excuse. You can go on the internet and find creative ways to cook a lot of these items that we already have in our kitchens. Another thing, and this is something I used to practice with a friend of mine when I lived overseas, is we would money pool. And by that, I mean, we would go to the supermarket and we would see, because I cooked on my own. Obviously, I have flatmates, but I would cook on my own. She would cook for herself. Sometimes you see fruits and it's like, I don't really want to pay this amount for fruits or potato or something or vegetables. So we would split the bill. That way we both leave with potatoes, onions, vegetables, but we split the bill. All right. So this is something that if you live well with your neighbors or your family, your friends, or your church members, you can say, you know what? They're digging some potatoes at a particular plantation. It is $30 a rod, but I still can't afford $30. Would you mind if I split it 15 you and 15 for me? And we can leave with a whole lot of sweet potatoes. So there are little things that we can do when we're going to the supermarket or the markets. Also buy things in smaller sizes. Sometimes we think upfront that we are saving $1 when we buy larger containers, but sometimes we don't realize the psychology behind it. We may be buying a larger bottle of oil, for example. And because we know we have a lot of oil there, we tend to use it faster, use more of it because you know what, I have a lot. But if you know that I've now cut my 3 liter to a 1 liter because I'm saving, I'm cutting back, and I'm being more smart with my money, my spending, you will then raise, you know what, I can't use so much oil anymore because I now have a smaller bottle of oil that has to last for the same time. And you're doing yourself some justice because you don't have to worry then about all that oil and grease in your food preparation. So sometimes buying smaller size items, you can cut back that way and let that item stretch over that same period of time. Buy produce in season. So fruits, vegetables, produce, some of them are seasonal, and when they're in season, they tend to be more affordable. When tomatoes are in season, I buy tomatoes left, right, and center. I eat them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I take them along as a snack with me sometimes. And when they're not, then I buy something else. So when things are in season, you buy them and you use them, okay? Take advantage of markets. So you go to the market on Saturday mornings, or there's some plantations that have a market on Saturday mornings. You go and you utilize these venues, these opportunities, and you save some money. Also, very key, starting a kitchen garden, really important. Some people will say to me, I really don't have space and I don't have time. But you just need some containers. If you may not have necessarily the space, but you can get some containers. You can put some on your step or your veranda or somewhere next to the side of the house where you can get some sunshine, get some soil, put them in anything that can hold soil. It could be old shoes. It could be some old blocks you had there to build something and you abandoned that and you have the blocks just laying around. Put some soil in the blocks, let them stand upright, and plant some herbs in there, some thyme, some parsley. Utilize all containers, all buckets. Don't let them catch water from mosquitoes. Utilize them. Some people will have a few chickens just for their household. That way you get eggs and then you get the chicken meat. So you save on chicken, you save on eggs. So some people might want to rear other animals if they have the time and the willpower for that. You can also rear other animals to cut back as well. And then at the end, look at being a responsible adult. It is very important that, you let your children model you. Sometimes I speak to patients and they're like, I can't get the child to eat this or that or the third. They just don't like vegetables. But when I speak to the parent and when I question them some more, I realize that the parent's not really eating the vegetables either. So the children need to model you. If you're not eating and you're not on board this healthy ride, and then it's going to be very hard to get your child to jump on board as well. Also, be honest with your children. If things are tight in the household and you cannot afford it, sit down and explain it. They may not understand like you will, but they'll catch on at some point. And you may take them to the supermarket and they may still be begging for this and that and the third, but you still want to remind them, you know what? We cannot afford. It's just some things we can't afford to buy. And I'm sure that they will understand eventually, and they will learn to appreciate some of the simpler things that you may have at home. All right. So these are just some of the things. I have a few other points there. As an adult, you just want to be more responsible when it comes to meal preparation and gardening and thinking about how you're going to make responsible decisions to help you eat healthy on a budget. So this has been my presentation this evening. Thank you for listening, and I'll open now for any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hurdle. So we have a few questions from the audience that we've been gathering. The first one, if you could kindly, before you log off here, if you could repeat the slides that relate to alternatives to salt and sugar.
Okay. This one?
Yes, I believe that's the one.
This is the one with sodium and salt.
Yes, so if you probably keep it down for like 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, no problem.
Students can see that. And in the meantime, the next question that we have is quinoa good for you?
So quinoa is good, but if we're speaking about affordable budget, it's not the most affordable, but yes, it's actually higher in protein than most of the other grains. It's actually, first of all, let me say what it is, because there's some people that may not know. Quinoa is a grain. It's quite tiny, really small. You can cook it similarly to the way you cook rice. It's good for you. It has more protein than the rice would have, and it's a good option to cook with. So that's fine. It's healthy for you, yes. But you want to pair it with a vegetable and a protein food.
Okay. I have a question here. Now, has there been any surveys carried out locally if we eat too much meat? If we eat too much meat.
Not that I am aware of. The meat would have been probably part of, this is a study done about 2014, which looked at, it was the Health of the Nation survey, and they were looking at sodium intake. So I think meat might have been part of that, only because of how we prepare the meat with a lot of salt and sodium. But specifically studies on meat, no, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. My next question is, with the chemicals that are used to spray vegetables and fruits to kill pests and the steroids that are given to birds to get them the required size, do you think that this could be creating a lot of sicknesses that we've been having?
So I am not a researcher or a scientist. I have not done my own studies, but I mean, it is probable, and the diets and the health outcomes of individuals suggest this, because we're seeing an increase in certain conditions that were generally not very popular, very common in days back. It probably could be because we are better able to diagnose conditions because of advancement of technology and medicine. But there probably is some association with the hormones, the additives, the pesticides, the manipulation of our foods and our meats. And it is very, very possible that there is a link between our diets and the things that we're now eating.
Okay, noted. I have a question here. Can you get calcium in your diet if you're lactose intolerant?
Of course. So yes, milk tends to be one of the considered as one of the more common sources of calcium in the diet, but there are many others. If you're lactose intolerant, first of all, you can get a lactose-free milk. Pine Hill Dairy does sell a lactose-free milk. Maybe a bit more expensive. That is an option. If it is a lactose-free milk, it will not have lactose, but it will have calcium. That's the first thing. Calcium can also come from things like peas and beans. So again, those legumes, the lentils, chickpeas, and black-eyed peas, and so on. Also your green leafy vegetables, so spinach, kale, Chinese cabbage, broccoli, they all have calcium. And then also sardines, so the bones, not the sardine itself. Oftentimes when we use sardine and we're doing a paste, we remove the inside, remove the bones. But the only way to get the calcium is from eating the bones of the sardine or the mackerel or the salmon, if they're canned. So you can get calcium from other foods as well, even if you're lactose intolerant.
Okay. This question pertains to intermittent fasting. You spoke about not having longer than 6 hours if you can between meals. How would that affect you if you're intermittent fasting? Would that be good for you as a practice, intermittent fasting?
So it is not recommended that diabetics do the intermittent fasting or fast too regularly, because again, this impacts blood sugars. You would imagine a person who's diabetic not eating for 16 hours, because most of the intermittent fasts are you eat within an 8-hour window, and for 16 hours you're not eating. So that's not really going to augur very well for a diabetic if they're constantly doing this. It may be okay and beneficial to do it from time to time, but I wouldn't recommend it. And generally doctors don't recommend it for patients who are diabetic. So obviously if you are going to eat every 6 hours, then that's not intermittent fasting, because that's eating on a regular schedule. Intermittent fasting, though, outside of the diabetic person, has been shown by research to have benefits to controlling blood sugars, controlling weight, and a number of other benefits. So it has its benefits. It's nothing that I would disapprove of, but certainly if you're diabetic, you either need to be under the supervision of somebody who knows what they're doing, but generally it is not recommended for diabetics because of the long gaps and because intermittent fasting is something that is practiced. So it's nothing that you do for one day. It is something that generally is done for several days a week or even every week.
Okay. Regarding fats, when we're doing the food groups, coming from oils, which one is better, or is one better than the other? Olive or coconut oil for cooking?
Oh, this is a tricky question. So, okay, when it comes to cooking and heat exposure, coconut oil. Coconut oil can handle higher temperatures, higher heating temperatures, whereas olive oil is generally not recommended that you heat it, although some people still cook with it, but it tends to denature the oil so that then it is not as beneficial as it should be if you used it at room temperature. So for me, I do use both, but when I use my olive oil, it is usually, because I don't use mayonnaise, I'll add it to things like sardines and tuna if I'm going to make a paste with them, instead of using mayonnaise. Or if you want to use you want to do a homemade salad dressing or vinaigrette. But generally for heating and for cooking, coconut oil, would be the better option.
Okay. All right. My last question here, and maybe persons in the audience have questions after me. Is there a difference between, or what is the difference between cane sugar and sugar from fruits? And a follow-up question to that is, cane sugar good for you?
Okay, so I don't remember the exact term, but there is there is free sugar and there is sugar that is part of a complex food structure. So when we have something like fruit, because fruit has sugar in it, but the sugar is also part of the entire fruit, which has complex carbohydrates. It has fiber in it. The body, like I showed you in the diagram earlier, come back to this diagram. What you're having in this particular diagram that I showed with the fruit, with the apple and any other fruit, so we have here, is that you have a complex carb. So you're seeing what's happening when you have the apple, you're getting that nice slow release because it's part of a complex structure. But if you have something like sugar cane, the sugar cane is a free sugar. It's just like the sugar in a juice. So when you suck the sugar cane, you're getting a liquid from that juice, and that's in a free form. So your body is going to absorb that sugar from the sugar cane faster than if you had an apple. So you're going to get, so if you use sugar cane, then if you suck sugar cane, you're going to be getting a spike in your blood sugars as opposed to if you had an apple. And when it comes to sugar, though brown sugar may not be as processed as white sugar, it is all sugar, and all of them will spike your blood sugars. So I just want people to be clear that whether you use brown sugar in your food or you use the granulated white sugar, it is all sugar, it is all simplified, it's all going to spike your blood sugar levels. So I hope that that is clear.
Okay, that is clear to me. I'm going to open the floor to anybody in the audience.
Thank you for the questions.
You're welcome. Thank you for the answers.
Welcome.
So does anybody have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Miss Leanne, you talk about these leafy vegetables. If we cannot eat them, is it okay if we blend them and just drink it? Is that healthy too?
Yes, Shirla. This is my aunt, by the way. Yes, you can blend, because I know some people have an issue with just eating them. So certainly you could blend them and use them as part of a smoothie, or you can add like a little fruit, like a little banana, and you can use them if it's more palatable to drink them in that form as opposed to eating them. So that's perfectly fine. And you can even drink them along with the meal. so that you're still getting the vegetables with the meal, but just in a blended or liquid form.
Some person told me about mixing them with Wonder World. Is that recommendable?
I can't really speak on that one. The world is like a herb, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know some people use that if they have a cold or a bad cough or something. And if you're doing that, then that would probably just be something short term. I do not know the benefits or the detriments to health if you use Wonder World on a long-term basis. So it's not something that I would recommend you do. You can get all the benefits of your green leafy vegetables by just drinking them. Another thing I want to mention too is that when you blend them, you are you're keeping all the enzymes, because when you heat something or you cook something, the heat destroys some of the nutritional value. That's the reality. But when you blend them now without them being cooked, you're getting more from that blended beverage than even if you cook the vegetables. So that's another benefit to blending them.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I have another question from the chat. It says, can you use honey rather than sugar? I guess, is honey a better alternative to sugar?
All right, so how I will answer this is I will say honey is gram for gram. Honey does not have as much sugar as sugar itself. We can use that term. So then you'll be, if you use honey, you'll be getting less sugar gram for gram. The problem is that because it has less sugar gram for gram, is not as sweet. So then people think that it's healthy and they end up using just as much or more sugar, more honey than they would if they would have used sugar. And as I would have showed you in, I like to go back and show these things. Right, as I would have showed you here, honey is still a carbohydrate. As we look at the end of this, the bottom of this table, it's still a sugar or sweet, and it will still impact your blood sugars because it's just like your cane sugar. Honey is in a free form. So the sugar in the honey is in a free form. So even if you use honey, though you may get a few other nutrients that you may not get in your sugar because it's so refined, the sugar at the end of the day, the honey at the end of the day is still going to impact your blood sugars as if you had used sugar itself. It is not as sweet gram for gram, but because it's not as sweet, then people, in order to get that same sweetness they would get from sugar, they end up using more of the honey to get that level of sweetness. And I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Deb. I have a question here, a little different. Should we keep food in the fridge in a pot, or should we, sometimes you cook and you just take the entire pot and you put it in the fridge? Is that healthy?
I would love for that person to ask me the question directly, because I feel like there's something else they should include in there. Nothing wrong with that. You cook it in your pot and you put it in the fridge, and depending on how well your fridge works, the food should keep in the fridge for at least a few days well, and you just warm it up. It's still, once you put it in the fridge, you freeze it, kind of still retains the nutritional value. I don't see why that would be a problem. But if the person wants to directly, sorry?
Oh, the person is not here, but I'm thinking, they're thinking that maybe the pot of itself, the particulars of the pot, the metal or whatever the pot is made of, the aluminum, would release into the food.
So it's probably best to use stainless steel, and you don't have to worry about that. Aluminum could be a bit dicey, especially if you're using acidic foods or greens. It is possible that it can leach into the food. So it's always best to go with stainless steel. Stainless steel. The other thing I was saying when we're talking about pots is that, I mean, this is nutrition, but obviously because you prepare nutrition in pots, be careful with a lot of these Teflon coated containers. It's okay at first when you use it, but then when you see all that black lining, which is obviously non-stick lining, that starts to come off. Where is it coming off? It's coming off into your food every time you cook and you scrape your utensil onto the lining, it's coming off. So as the life of these pots is not going to be very long, because once they start to deteriorate, you really should get rid of them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else has another question? I have a few, but I just want to give the opportunity to someone online. So if you have a question, you can go now.
Just one quick question. When it comes to breakfast, should we is it good that if we should miss the breakfast and then go into lunch and have a good nutritious lunch?
No, you want to have breakfast. Break fast, as the name suggests, breaks the overnight fast. So breakfast, when you eat breakfast, the nutrition in your breakfast foods is going to supply your body with the nutrients it needs for the morning, whether you are a student for studying or you're working, whether it's manual work or more mental work, you need that nutrient supply. Remember, you can't get your nutrition from anywhere else. You can only get it from food. And so practicing skipping meals is never a good idea. You want to have breakfast, you want to have lunch, you want to have dinner. And dinner, by the way, does not have to be rice and peas and chicken. Dinner can be quite light as long as it's balanced. Remember that each meal needs to have 3 components: the carbohydrate or the starch. Secondly, the protein food, which can be a legume or it can be food from animals. So we know our food groups well now, so this should not confuse people. And thirdly, the third component should be fruit or vegetables. So if your dinner is tea and bread, there is something fundamentally wrong with that. You can't just have tea and bread. That is not dinner. You can't just have crackers and tea for breakfast. That is not dinner. You are breakfast. You want to have something nourishing. So it needs to be balanced with protein, carbohydrate, and either fruit or vegetables.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, someone else had a question. How good is an alkaline diet?
All right, so this is a topic all on its own, and I really don't want to get too deep into this. An alkaline diet, yes, is beneficial. There's a school of thought, which I tend to agree with, is that when the body is very acidic, then obviously it creates the environment for inflammation, and usually that can be the seat or the foundation for a lot of diseases to develop. So by having more alkaline food, all alkaline foods really is more plant-based foods. So don't let people confuse you that you have to go there and buy all these expensive products. It just means more fruits, more vegetables, more water, getting in coconut water if your body can tolerate it, if you don't have kidney disease, more plant-based foods, ground provisions. That's really what alkaline diet is. Cutting back on the inflammatory foods like the greasy stuff, so much meat or fatty meat, and just sticking closer to the ground. And so yes, there are benefits.
Okay, thank you. They also asked about intermittent fasting, but we already covered that. So I guess I can say intermittent fasting is not recommended for persons with diabetes, but persons who are not suffering from diabetes, it can be beneficial. Am I correct?
Oh, yes, I can. Let me just also interject there that it's not always a very good thing for people with acid reflux either. Because with acid reflux, you should try not to have an empty stomach for too long, because then the body's producing that acid, it is being produced on an empty stomach, and that's when it refluxes up and the symptoms can be worse. So obviously if you're doing intermittent fasting, it means you haven't eaten for a long time, and that can really be very, very bothersome for people who suffer with acid reflux.
All right, thank you. So I have another question here. It says, how long should we freeze food? Should there be a max duration? And does it either shorten or lengthen depending on food type?
If your freezer deep freeze works well, you can freeze foods for very long. I can't tell you if months or years, but for me personally, I would start to question how good certain types of foods may be. When I say good, okay, like when it comes to meats and fish, my thing would be, do I want to eat fish that's been frozen for a year? I probably may not want to. So I would just say use your discretion, but foods that are more plant-based can probably be frozen for very, very long. There are some foods that when you freeze them, sometimes when you thaw them down, they can be a bit sappy. So again, it's just knowing what those foods are and working around them. But froze, once your deep freeze or your freezer works well, you can freeze foods for quite a long period of time. You start going into a year, then the certain foods, I might question that. I personally may not necessarily want to eat fish that's been in somebody's freezer for a year, or even my freezer for a year. So I probably didn't answer that the way the person wanted me to, but that's my answer on that.
Thank you.
Like, in terms of the fish and the meats, they can keep around usually like if they're on season and they're fillet or whole, usually 6 months to a year in freezer. Like if you have a good freezer buy, they can do help prevent freezer burn and they will still remain nutritious the same way. So there's no issue. And every like season and stuff like that, you would tend to want to use on 3 to 6 months. But they come with the same way taste and the same way, same nutritional value. Well, scientifically, it was the same nutritional value. So that's not an issue. You just have to just store them properly. If you have like a thing buy, then they will get freezer burn. So then you don't want that. So you just want like a thick, good freezer bag.
Thank you, MW. So we see, I always say to persons, I learn and they learn. It's always a two-way street.
Okay, thank you also. What are macros and what role do they play in our diet?
What are what?
Macros. Macros, M-A-C-R-O-S.
Oh, macros.
Yes,
macros.
Sorry,
So,
that is accent, I apologize.
okay, that's okay. So if I hope I'm understanding correctly, but my understanding of macros are your macronutrients. All right. If the person can speak, they want to bring clarity, but macros are macronutrients. So they're nutrients. There are several nutrients in the diet. The macronutrients are the nutrients that are required in larger amounts. So your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your fats. Those are the macronutrients. Vitamins, minerals, and water will be your micronutrients, meaning that you need them. They are still essential to the diet, but you need them in smaller amounts than you would need your macronutrients. So macro just means, the name suggests, is that you need them in a diet in larger amounts. All right, so carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And of course, these are very important. That's why you need them in the diet. Carbohydrates provide energy. Protein helps to support muscle mass and the various organs in the body that are also protein in nature. Protein is also an energy source for the body. Also, the fats are not bad things. They are also an energy source. They also help your body to absorb your fat vitamins. Fat-based vitamins, vitamins A, D, E, and K, your fat vitamins. So fats are very important. They also help to coat the organs in the body and prevent them from damage. So fats are very important. All of your macronutrients are key.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question is, can you give us some examples on how to avoid gastro, even though we know food is not the only means of having gastro? Do you want me to repeat it?
Not really. I think that question is not more for me, probably like an environmental health officer, but not necessarily for me as a nutritionist. So I don't know that I know how to answer that. Obviously, just being careful with the foods, like keeping hot foods hot and cold foods cold, and not leaving things out of the freezer for too long or fridge for too long. Those basic, practices as it relates to food. I don't know that I can say any more on that.
Okay, I understand. Okay, anybody else have a question in the audience? You can go now. Okay,
Hey, Leanda.
Okay,
Hi.
go ahead.
Hi. One question, and this is related to the use of milk. Guide me in terms of if the almond milk or the 2% milk. I normally use 2% milk with cereal or my oats. So when I'm making oats, which I do most mornings, I would use the 2% milk in it. And I know that I've used the almond milk sometimes, but what is really the best one to use, the 2% or the almond milk?
Can I ask why you use the almond milk sometimes?
because I was told that it is better to use, but I also don't like the taste. So that's why I would normally use the 2% milk. To me, I find it is more palatable, to be very
Right.
honest.
Okay. So I think this question is a real prime example to getting nutrition information from any and everybody. Oftentimes people use certain terms very loosely, like better and good for you, but within what context? Because if you have a lactose intolerant person, then 2% milk is not better for them. If you have a person who's allergic to almonds, then almond milk is not better for them. So the thing about it is that the nutritional value differs, and it really just depends on what works better for you. That's really the answer. What I will say is I will give you the nutritional value of both, and then individuals will then determine which is better for them, because it's very relative. So if you have cow's milk, whether it is a whole milk, 2% skim milk, it's obviously dairy. The nutritional value is that you're going to get protein from there, you're going to get calcium from there, you're going to get iron from there even, all right? Now, if you're going to substitute your cow's milk, your 2% milk, with something like almond milk, you need to know that the almond milk does not have the protein. It doesn't have any protein really. So for a glass of almond milk, you're probably going to get 1 or 2 grams of protein, compared to a glass of 2% milk, which will probably give you a minimum of 7 to 8 grams of protein. So you're seeing when it comes to the protein, there's a vast difference. So if you're looking to get protein, then obviously your 2% milk will be a better option. 2% is good, yes, because it is lower in fat. So that's why you call it 2%. It only has 2% fat. But if a person is trying to get away from cow's products or dairy milk because of certain health issues, then obviously the almond milk will be a better alternative. So you just have to determine what's best for you. For me, I use almond milk, not necessarily because one is better than the other, but I prefer the almond milk. The problem with the almond milk is that it doesn't have protein. So even when I put almond milk in my oats, I still need to eat protein with that meal to get my protein food, to get my protein, because the almond milk is not going to supply me with protein. But it will give you some calcium because it is enriched with calcium. So I went all around the world just to explain the compare the two, so that then persons can decide which is better for them.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Follow up
Yes,
to that.
please.
I personally use like the oat milk.
Okay.
Because yeah, I don't like almonds, but I think, well, for me, like I think I use it because of because it doesn't have the fat that you would find in the dairy milk.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, well, when I always heard that it was better, like the plant-based milks were better. I was thinking it was because it doesn't contain the milk, the fat or the cholesterol that you would find in dairy milk. So
Right.
can you comment?
Yeah, so you make a point, a good point. And if that's the reason why you're using it, then fine, perfect. When you have skim milk or 2%, it means that the majority of the fat has been removed. So if you're worried about cholesterol and fat, then you don't need to if you're using a skim milk or 2% milk. So skimmed, as the name suggests, the fat has been skimmed away from the milk. So when we are recommending persons use milk, we're saying if you want to go for a lower fat option, then skim milk or 2% can work. But if you generally want to go totally away from the animal source of milk, then almond, cashew, oat milk, rice milk can work. The other thing I would say about these is that sometimes to give them flavor, sometimes they can have quite a bit of sugar in them. So people may be using them left, right, and center, and a diabetic person may not realize that, oh shoot, you know what? My particular almond milk or oat milk is loaded with sugar. And this probably is one of the reasons, or is contributing to my elevated blood sugars. So just another thing to pay attention to. Hope that answers your question, Adrian.
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Welcome.
I just want to ask a question about high cholesterol levels.
Sorry,
What?
Galaxy Tab, I'm not hearing you very well.
All right, hold on. Just turn the volume. Yes, can you hear me now? Any better?
It's not, I don't think the issue is the volume, it's just the clarity, but go ahead, I'll try and make out.
Okay. High cholesterol levels. What foods we recommend high cholesterol levels?
So you're now making me go on a completely different topic now. I'm going to try and answer this as simple as possible. This is a topic all on its own. The body makes cholesterol, the liver, everybody's liver, as all of us sit here listening tonight, everybody's liver makes cholesterol. The problem is when we have foods that are high in saturated fat or trans fat or cholesterol, that then increases the amount of fat in the body when the liver already makes. So there are some foods that can increase your cholesterol levels, bearing in mind that some people are also at an increased risk of high cholesterol by virtue of their genes, their genetics. There's some people, it runs in their family, so they are at increased risk. But diet also has a role to play as well. So you want to watch for things that are greasy, that are fried, that are fatty, butters, pastries. You know, a lot of us like to buy these patties, whether it's a lentil, whether it's a chicken patty. The point is that the outside of the patty itself, the nature of these patties is that they're just made with shortening or butter. So while the filling, the lentils may be perfectly healthy, the pastry itself is full of fat. Watch for things like mayonnaise, fried stuff. A lot of these fast foods, things that we buy, the potato chips, all these things that are really oily, the processed meat products, cheeses, these things are also loaded with fat, saturated fats. If you're doing a lot of fatty meats, like, you know, you're not removing the skin from the lamb or the pork, you're just eating the pork just like that with all the fat in it. These things together, so it's not just sometimes one item in the diet, it can be sometimes looking at your diet in its totality to see what the various culprits are. And oftentimes when I speak to patients, it is not one thing. Sometimes there's several things in their diet that add up. And I'll tell you this, sometimes I speak to patients and they'll say to me, well, honestly, time immemorial, my family eats pork on Sunday, so I have pork once a week. I say, well, that's fine. But then they'll tell me, oh, you know, and on Saturday we have sauce. And then they'll say, only one morning a week I eat corned beef. And then they'll say, well, actually, I go on Friday nights and I have fried chips and fish. So by the time we have finished the conversation, even though they're only having each of these things once a week, they're having several things once a week, and it all adds up so that the body does not know the difference. All the body knows is that she gave me something that was high in fat every single day of the week. So if there's 7 days a week, you just had 7 high fat things in the course of that week. And all of it contributes. And that's why it's important to look at the diet in its totality when it comes to looking at controlling your cholesterol levels.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. And to help with that, you want to eat more high fiber foods because the fiber kind of binds to the cholesterol and prevents some of it from getting into the bloodstream. So that when your blood tests are done next time, you have a lower cholesterol reading. So if you pair something like a salad with macaroni pie, if you do have macaroni pie, the fiber holds on to the fat in the cheese and the macaroni pie and stops that from being absorbed into the bloodstream. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry for that. I was just saying out loud. I didn't know that. That's interesting. But I do have a question.
Sure.
Besides olive or coconut oil, which is the best oil to use or avoid? Pure vegetable oil, soybean, canola oil. So I guess what's the best oil to use or avoid?
My answer to that is probably not what they want to hear, but the answer to that is use all oils sparingly.
So no oil is better than the other?
So all of these processed oils, no one is better than the other. So I can't tell you that soybean oil is better than sunflower oil or sunflower oil is better than some other oil. They're all processed. I'll leave it there because this is a very controversial topic, but I'll say that the best thing to do is to limit your oil consumption. Even with coconut oil, just because coconut oil is considered as a healthy alternative. You can't just fry with coconut oil. So all oils you want to use in moderation. Limit your oil consumption because they all can contribute to increased cholesterol levels.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I have one question here. I have a toddler, and he is going through this phase where he likes lots of milk. So we've switched from formula to whole milk. I guess plain is considered whole milk. So as he gets older, I'm noticing that he kind of likes the milk a lot now. He wants to have it not just in the morning or in the evening. He wants to have afternoon tea, things like that. So I'm concerned about giving him too much whole milk. Should that be a valid concern? Should there be a limit to how much milk you give babies or toddlers, especially whole milk?
Right. So what I would say there is that, like with any other person along the life cycle, there needs to be variety. So whether it is milk, whether it is fruit, whether it is ground provision, whether it is meat, that a person or a toddler is consuming it several times a day, it could be a bit tricky. So I would encourage that you encourage him, kind of wean him off so much milk. Milk is good, yes, because he needs the protein for muscle development and he needs the calcium for his bones and all that development that's happening in his skeletal system. But just be careful with the milk. Generally, if he's having his formula, his clim, some people say 3 times a day he can have that, or replace it with whole milk. The clim should not be replaced. As a toddler, it should not be replacing his main meals. So if he's getting cereal, or that's when you know it's becoming a problem. If clim and cereal is becoming his lunch or his dinner, then that's where the problem lies. So he should be, at his age as a toddler, he should be eating from the family pot. So if he's getting this as part of breakfast, lunch, dinner, and in between, then probably he's having it too often.
Okay, I understand. I think it's just like a snack for him. He eats normally. So he will eat, breakfast, he will eat lunch, the same lunch that we eat and things. But I find in the afternoons, he would want milk. And if he would want it. I'm not sure if it's because it's sweet and he doesn't get any juice or anything. He just gets milk and water. So maybe he prefers it to the water. So I'm not sure if that.
Yeah, so water should also be given as well throughout the day. So that shouldn't be replacing the water. You can have it, but it shouldn't be replacing the water.
Okay. Another follow-on question to that. What about portion control or portion size for toddlers? You said for adults we use the fist. What about for toddlers?
Pretty much the same for them as well. So generally children tend to guide you in terms of how much they eat. Most children, I would say, not all of them, because some of them are very picky. But some children may ask for more, so then maybe they haven't had enough, and that kind of guides what their portion size should look like. But as a general rule, their folded fistful can be enough starch. Then you couple that with the vegetables, the same way we would eat from the pot, and ensure that they have protein as well, because the protein is important for development.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. Let me see, I think I have another question in here, or maybe a comment. No, I don't. Anybody else have any questions? Please feel free to say it now. Okay, it seems there are no more questions. Finally, you're a community health officer. How do we get in contact with our community health officer? Sorry, you have a question there? Okay, no. So yeah, I was saying, as a community, how can we get in contact with our community health officer?
So my title is Community Nutrition Officer. There is a community nutrition officer at each of the 9 polyclinics. So while I will be at some of the polyclinics, there are nutrition officers at others. So you would need to know what polyclinic is within your catchment area where you live. And then you would also need to be registered with the clinic. Most times to see the nutritionist, you probably would need to see a doctor, or you speak to the doctor at the clinic, and they can then just refer you over to see the nutrition officer. There are some private doctors as well that can refer, because there are not a whole lot of private nutritionists, and then obviously you have to pay for those services. So if your private doctor wants, because I do have persons that are referred from private doctors to the polyclinic, and then the nutrition officer there can see the patient. But generally, you would need to be referred from like a doctor, either privately or in the polyclinic system. But you would need to be registered with the polyclinic first. In most cases, that is.
Okay, and you also practice privately. Can someone make an appointment directly with you, apart from being referred to from a doctor?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
can you give us your contact information?
All right, so that's 255-0142.
Okay, great. I guess if we can just put that in the chat a little later, if you could repeat it again.
255-0142.
Okay, and we're going to have that number available at the office if you need it also. Okay, so I have one final question.
Sure.
This one pertains to breakfast. So it says, you mentioned tea and biscuit is not a meal in itself. If it is complemented with a fruit or yogurt, but no protein, would that be acceptable?
I just give the acceptable, label. I think sometimes we want to make compromises. So the acceptable is a protein, a carbohydrate, and fruit or vegetables.
Okay.
If a person uses a yogurt will have the protein, so the yogurt will be the protein option, but then there will still need to be some kind of vegetable or fruit with that.
Okay. I think for me personally, in my culture, it's just normal to eat bread and tea for breakfast or for dinner.
Yes.
So it's very strange to, well, or it's like we have to change our habits to add in a fruit. That seems like lunch. All right. Well, I don't think there are any more questions. So
can I just add before the gentleman speaks?
Yeah, sure.
That the fruit it's more practical to have fruit with breakfast. I think it's a lot easier to have fruit with breakfast, and then the vegetables can come with lunch and dinner, because nobody does soup or put grapes in it. You tend to have vegetables with it. All right. So the vegetables can come with the lunch and dinner. And like I said, most people think that dinner has to be this big solid meal. It can just be a slice or two of bread with some cucumber and an egg and a cup of tea. That's not very, very heavy. It's not a cooked, what we will consider a cooked meal. So that's a light dinner option that persons can have, rather than just having 2 or 3. Because I think what people are doing is that they have the bread or biscuits because it's convenient, and they eat several slices of bread to feel satisfied, when they could feel satisfied with something more balanced and make everything that they use count towards the nutritional intake, as opposed to just eating plain bread.
Okay, we understand. That makes sense. I think we're going to close in a few minutes. I think there was one person that's trying to get a question in. I'll just give them the opportunity if they're still there. And then afterwards, we're going to close. So if you have a question, please go ahead. Okay, I guess they no longer have that question. So thank you so much for all the information that you've provided. I'm sure we've learned so many things. I'm going to hand over back to John Paul Boleyn, and he's going to take it from here. But thank you so much personally.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Let me echo Fiona's sentiments as well. Thank you very much. You have given us a lot of food for thought, pun intended. I am also grateful that we had this discussion, because this week is grocery week for me, so we'll be able to make some informed decisions going to the supermarket. I just want to reiterate for those of you who may have questions, or after we are finished and a question pops in your head, you can contact your local polyclinic, and you can have a word with your nutrition officer to get your information. So we won't keep you much longer. We want to thank each and every one of you for joining us this evening. Just a few announcements to be made, and then I will hand over to the senior pastor. So please remember that the Youth for Life class is on Monday, tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. and that is on Google Meet. The women's educational class is on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Wednesday is our prayer meeting evening, so be sure to send in your prayer requests. The men's educational class is at 7:30 on Friday, and that's via Zoom. And Next Generation Youth or Youth Ministries, that will also be at 7:30 this Friday via Zoom. Please remember that on Sunday, we are going to have our Sunday morning service, and that will commence at 8 a.m. So I want to thank each and every one of you for joining. Thank you again, Leanda Hurdle, yes. At this moment, I will hand over to Pastor Edwin Bullen, and he will conclude this evening's proceedings.
Thank you so much, John Paul, and Fiona as well. Leanda, we really appreciate you coming and sharing with us this evening. We really appreciate, you taking the time out to pour into our lives, and I know that the brethren, those online, would have really received some important and very great information that you shared with us this evening. And this information, I'm so sure will be able to be passed on to other people, friends, relatives that we would have, that we will be able to be a blessing to them as well. So we really thank you so much. We really appreciate you sharing, and our prayers are with you as you continue to spread this good news. And the field that you are in, I believe that we need to have our people in these various areas that they can educate our constituents, they can educate our communities, that we will be able to look after ourselves well. So we really appreciate you and appreciate your ministry as well. Our Father God, we give you thanks and praise this evening. We thank you for Leanda. We thank you, Lord God, for the way that you have used her this evening, Lord, to be a benefit to us, your people. We thank you, Father God, that you have given her the knowledge, you've given her the wisdom, Lord God, that she was able to pass on, to share with us, that we can be, oh God, better men and better women. We pray, oh God, that we will utilize this information. Lord, we pray, oh God, that you will help us, that God, we will follow, Lord God, the tips. We will follow, Lord God, what has been shared with us, that, Lord, our lives will be impacted and that our lives will be a blessing for your honor and your glory. We pray, God, this evening, God, that you will give us a good night's rest. And we pray that your grace, your glory, and your strength will be upon each one of us tonight. We thank you and we bless you. In Jesus' name, amen. Praise God. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Amen.